So Saie Joshi it majored with a Bachelor in Arts in Sociology from Baylor University. She's currently a medical student at BCM and is interested in emergency medicine, pediatrics, or maybe psychiatry. So for now, let me stop my screen share and I'll give it off to Saie.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can figure this out. Oh, I see. Okay, it says that host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me fix that real quick. But if I can't, then
I can always send it to you.
let me. Okay, yeah, it should say all participants now.
Okay. Okay, and we can, let's see. Okay, y'all can see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that awesome introduction. And thanks so much to Sam who reached out to me and then also the whole SAMP team. I really love what you guys are doing and thanks for reaching out. I think it's a really good resource for high school students, college age students, just to hear from people who are in the field that they might be interested in. It's a good mentorship program. So thanks so much for having me. So I'm honored to be speaking with y'all. I have a short presentation here just on kind of my background, what brought me to medicine, my advice for those that are interested in medicine, and I'd love to answer questions, be your mentor and guide through this process as well. If you have any questions about medical school or life in general, put them in the chat box. I would love to, if there's someone that can tell me, because I don't think I can actually see the chat box, but if there's any questions, I would love to answer them right on the spot if you think of something when I talk about it. And then, yeah, I'll just give a short presentation and then we can all kind of chat. If you guys want to unmute, ask your questions, or put them in the chat box as well towards the end, I'd love to talk more. And feel free to like interrupt at any point as well if you have any questions. So a little bit about my journey to med school. I go to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. A little bit about me, I have a podcast called Brown Girl, White Coat. That's probably the most interesting thing about me. So I talk about a lot of medically related things on there. I do a bunch of interviews with some amazing physicians. We talk about policy, motivation for medical school, study tips, and more. Anything that's my more professional platform. Then I have an Instagram page as well, where I talk about things that are more personal, things like imposter syndrome, things that everyone in med school is going through at the time, things like disordered eating or spots in Houston that I love, finding time to work out and teaching about medical topics. I've recently started picking a topic that I see in clinic and teaching you guys a little bit about it. So here we go. Yeah, there's the Instagram and the podcast if you guys are interested in that. I also have a YouTube channel. I am a singer and I love to sing. That's like my first love is music and singing. So if you would like to go search me up on there, I haven't posted anything in a while, but I post some singing videos on there as well. So where I'm at in my medical school career right now, I just started third year as of 2 weeks ago, and I just got done with my pediatrics rotation, and I am definitely a little bit interested in pediatrics. So we'll see where that ends up, but and I'm starting my surgery rotation on Monday, so that'll be exciting. I've been in clinical rotations for a little while, learned a lot. I feel like a fully functioning medical student. I've learned a lot about myself and about the whole process and what kind of physician I want to be in the future. So I'd love to share more about that with you guys a little bit later. And then the reason that I love speaking at things like this and the reason that I do all of the social media stuff is because I have had a really great mentor in my life. So my sister is a current resident in OBGYN, and she's actually visiting me right now, and she's started a rotation in Houston as well. So I had her as a mentor through this whole process, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have mentors through this process. They don't have older siblings or family that are in medicine. So if you guys would like to reach out to me on any social media platform, I love mentoring people, and honestly, the field of medicine needs so much more diversity and it needs to be more inclusive. And I think that getting more first gens in medicine, getting more people of color in medicine is something that I'm really passionate about. So if you need any assistance with personal statement editing or just mentorship or just a call of like, hey, am I on the right track? I meet with people on Zoom and I call people on Zoom all the time. If you guys need mentors and you don't have that kind of person in your life. So there's a little bit about me. So this is how I became interested in medicine. So the first picture on the top right is back in 2010. This is me and my sister in Haiti right after the earthquake in Port-au-Prince. And so that was a very defining moment for my interest in medicine. And then the other picture here is me at my sister's white coat ceremony with my sister in the middle and then my mom as well. So it all really did start out on a trip to Haiti. We went with a disaster response team right after because they just needed a heck of a lot more hands at the time. Now the disaster response team is called All Hands Response Team, I believe. They changed their name in the middle somewhere. And I was extremely drawn in that moment. We were there for, hands-on labor, but I was extremely drawn to the practice of medicine in a disaster setting and in a resource limited setting. So there were a bunch of makeshift hospitals there, and I was able to see what the primary care physicians and the emergency care physicians did there. And I pretty much etched that into my mind as, okay, this is what a doctor does. They operate in these limited resource settings, and that's immediately the kind of doctor that I wanted to become. So I started forming that image, and that image for me was, an emergency physician who makes do with little resources, makes a lasting impact on communities that need it the most, and they help the most critical of patients. And that's still what I think of, in my head as a doctor. So for people, for other people, that could be, a surgeon, or that could be a dermatologist. And it really just depends on what you see yourself doing and what you see as that ultimate physician picture when you look into yourself. So if you're interested in medicine, I would highly recommend that you do a bit of self-reflection when it comes to that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be a certain specialty, but if you can just look inside yourself or get exposure to these things so that you can answer that question, what kind of physician do I want to be? That could be someone who's interested in advocacy. It can be someone who's interested in working with kids. Do you want to be on TV like Sanjay Gupta on CNN and, talk about global health? And, or do you want to be on the front lines of the research of this COVID vaccine? Like, what do you want to do with your life? And I think that's the most important thing to think of before you even think about, oh, do I want to be like a dermatologist, or do I want to be in a specific residency program? So all valid options, not trying to push y'all either way. So now I have to make the disclaimer also that I think medical mission trips are not looked favorably upon now because of the lack of impact that you can make in a few short weeks. But I think full disclosure, I think the best thing to do is to go with a program or to find a program that makes lasting impact and continually gives back to that area, not just kind of goes for 2 weeks and then takes all the resources and all the good stuff out of that area right after. So I think just a disclaimer there. And then lastly, my sister was going through this process a couple years before I did. And so that was a bonus for me. And I became interested in it because I just saw how awesome it was through her eyes, how much she was learning in med school and how much that was making her become a better person, and how it was kind of fulfilling her dreams of, helping people and loving science and getting to kind of do all of the above. Do we have a chat question? Okay, someone says, okay, I'm going to talk about my pre-med experience in the next slide. So we will answer those questions. Okay, so this is a few pictures from my undergrad experience at Baylor College of Medicine. So I also do have a podcast episode titled My Pre-Med Journey, and it talks a little bit more in detail about what I did in undergrad. So I think looking back, it really doesn't matter what you major in. It really doesn't matter what school you go to even. I know there's a lot of pressure surrounding going to really prestigious undergrad schools. I personally went to Baylor because I got into their combined BS-MD program, and that was very attractive to me to not have to take the MCAT. So I went to their 4+4 program. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I moved all the way down to Waco, Texas to go here because it let me bypass the MCAT, and that was honestly the main reason. So it really doesn't matter what you major in. I majored in sociology, and that was after changing my major so many times. I was biology going into undergrad, and then I changed to business halfway through, and then I changed to sociology my junior year and completed that major in 2 years. So looking back on it, I didn't even take biochemistry. I didn't take organic chemistry, I didn't take any of the higher level chemistry courses. So, and that kind of thing really didn't help me prepare for medical school in any way. So if you were, say, like a music theory major, I don't think that would really put you at a disadvantage at all. Or I think if anything, it would make you stand out, it would make you unique, and it would actually be a great asset to your medical school application. And I really did love being a sociology major. So I think that was one of the best things I did, because one, I would say it's a slightly less intensive major than biology. So I was able to really enjoy my undergrad experience after I switched my major. But I was also able to become extremely woke after starting that major, because I got to take a bunch of great classes like race, class, and gender, sociology of aging, death and dying, during which we had to actually prepare for our own funeral. So that was extremely eye-opening class. And I learned so much through that major. And my capstone project for my sociology major was actually looking at the idea of conservative men who actually want to marry trophy wives, and then they raise their own women to kind of bypass those traditional gender roles, and they want their daughters to earn trophies. So it was based on an article called "Why Men Want to Marry Melanias and Raise Ivankas." And so it looked at like the dichotomy of those ideas of the women you want to raise versus the women you want to marry. So that was super interesting. And I would have never gotten to study something like that if I had been a biology major. And I'm really interested in, groups of people and psychology and all that. So that really helped me explore that interest a little bit more. So yeah, basically all in all, you don't have to major in something that's, traditional. You don't have to do the science major route. You're going to get a lot of that in med school. You're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. So if you have any other interests, if you have an interest in music or dance or literally anything that's not sciencey, I would encourage you to explore that further in undergrad for sure before you think about starting medical school. So yeah, let's see, what else do I have here? So I would like to add that though it doesn't matter what you major in, I think it's really important to get involved in things that are outside of school in undergrad. So how involved do you get during your 4 years? I think that's something that med school committees look at. And what do your experiences really show about you? So I wanted to share the picture that is on the left lower corner is me with some kids that I taught at Mission Waco. And Mission Waco was a after school program for quote unquote at-risk youth is what they used to call them. And so all these students, elementary age students would come there, and I was their vocal coach. So that was like one of the most fun and formative experiences in my undergrad career. Sorry if you can hear the siren. But I also got paid for it, so it was amazing. So I was their vocal coach, and I would work with the musical theater department. So I got to cast their production of Lion King, and I got to cast and work on like the musical numbers and everything with them. And that was just amazing because it was another opportunity for mentorship. And I think that it really made a difference in the Waco community. I've been taking voice lessons since I was a little kid, and some of these kids had beautiful voices but had never been trained. And so that was like a very meaningful experience to me. And so for the program that I was in, I actually interviewed in high school, but had I interviewed in college, that would have been the #1 experience I would have talked about, because it shows character, it shows that you have a love for mentorship, a love for kids. So I highly recommend, when you get involved in things that you love, I think that really shows through interview experiences as well. So that was my one thing that I just absolutely loved in college. And then this is just me singing and me at a football game. Basically just enjoy your undergrad. Okay, so finally I got to real life med school, which is a lot of fun despite what people say. This is me on my first day back after COVID on the left, and I was pretty terrified because we were out of school for about 2 months, and then I was kind of scared to go back to the real life and having to wear a mask and wear PPE all the time. And Houston is just really crazy right now when it comes to COVID cases. So that was an interesting experience. Now it's just kind of second nature to wear all these masks and PPE when you are treating and caring for patients, but that was the first day. And then, yeah, so med school is a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot about myself than I probably ever wanted to know. At Baylor, the way it works is the first year and a half is your preclinical years, where you start learning everything that you need to know about medicine. And then January, your second year, is when you start clinical rotations. So the first year and a half is this crazy transition time. For me, being a sociology major, I hadn't studied those basic sciences. So those first two terms were a little bit more intensive for me than they were probably for other people. But I made it eventually. They teach you all of the physiology that you need to know, all of the biochemistry, all of the histology, anatomy, all of that stuff you learn during your first year and a half. I think we have a question. Okay, cool. Oh, how many years will it take to become a doctor? So to get your MD, you will need to do 4 years of undergrad, and depending on, there's some programs that let you do 3 years or 2 years of undergrad, but mostly 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school. Then you'll get your MD, and then you will have to do a residency program after that. So that can be anywhere from 3 to 6+ years. But it really just depends on what kind of physician you want to become and how much time you really want to spend on your education before you're earning a real paycheck. So the second question is, if I wanted to become a pediatrician, what's the suggestion? How and where do I start? Okay, yeah, you definitely want to go to undergrad and then get to medical school, and then you will do a pediatrics residency after medical school. But I think that if you want to do something like pediatrics, you can even start now, gearing a lot of your efforts to working with kids and showing that passion from an early age. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But yeah, so it's a pediatrics residency after medical school, which is a long, long time. Okay, perfect. So where was I? So the first year and a half of medical school is preclinicals. You're learning all the important stuff, and then you start clinical rotations, where your time is just really not your own, basically. So I'm at the hospital for surgery. I'll be at the hospital at 6 a.m. to start rounding, and then I will get to go home by 7 p.m. So it's a really long time on some more intensive specialties like surgery. But it's a lot of fun. So I think that clinical rotations are one of the best parts of medicine. You're a student, so no one really expects you to know a whole lot. You get to basically learn anything you want to learn, really. I've had experiences where I've stepped in with the nurse because I wanted to see, like, hey, how do you do an IV? And I can just ask a nurse and go in there and watch, and then maybe the next time I'll know how to do it, and maybe they'll let me do it. If you want to see something, if you want to go see a cool patient, something with a patient with a really interesting case, all you have to do is ask, and everyone is very kind and they want you to learn. And you really can't do anything wrong. No one trusts you enough to like do a surgery, so you're not going to like do something wrong. It's really low stakes when it comes to that sort of thing. And it's just a really great learning experience. And I wanted to share that as a medical student, you're going to have a lot more time with the patients than any other provider is going to have. So it's really important to form connections with your patients and know little details about them. So so there's something called pre-rounding, where you will chart review your patient and then you go see them before any of the other providers see them. And so during that time, I think it's important to just ask your patient, like, how are you doing? Like, you know, being in the hospital is hard. COVID is really hard. How are you doing? And I did that with a patient the other week, and I found out that this patient was not doing so well when it comes to, you know, her mental sanity. So the patient was actually her son, and mom was basically started bawling when I asked her how she was. And as a medical student, I was able to tell the team that and say, hey, you know, you guys might not have had time to kind of look into how this patient is actually doing. And we were able to, because I just asked that question, we were able to get a chaplain for her so that she could confide in someone spiritually. And then her child, who was actually in the hospital, he was having a lot of anxiety about everything as well. So we were able to get Child Life in there. And Child Life brings like board games and video games to them. So I think the role of a med student is so important in the clinical space. So you can do a lot that your attendings and your residents might not have time for because they're dealing with the real like medical things, and you're able to just check in with your patients. And I think that people really appreciate that when the med students do that. So that was one of the coolest experiences because I formed a connection with that patient because they were there for over a week. And I think that's when I was like, okay, maybe I actually really do like peds, because it was just a cool experience having to talk to the patient and their parent. Is there a question? I missed that. Okay, so I wanted to put this slide in there to talk about dealing with failure, because medical school is rough to get into. It's rough while you're in as well. It's pretty hard. There's a lot of information. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication to the field of medicine. And a lot of people go through, you know, the experience of not getting into med school on their first time. And when I ask people on Instagram, like, what questions do you have for me? Or what are you guys interested in me talking about? This is always like the #1 thing that comes up is, what do I do if I don't have a high enough MCAT? What do I do if I like didn't get into med school on my first try? Or what do I do if I don't have a high GPA? So I would highly, highly consider this is a question that a lot of people have. So I would highly consider talking to the people that are at your med school or the people that are at your undergrad that have been through this and what kinds of options they explored. So a few things I know are applying DO. They usually accept lower GPAs and lower MCAT scores. You could do a post-bac program. You could take a year off, a gap year. A lot of people do that to strengthen their application. A lot of friends that I have worked as scribes. During that process, you learn a lot of medical terminology, and you get paid like minimum wage to be a scribe. It's a good networking opportunity as well. And recently, Stanford, due to the whole COVID crisis here, has started accepting medical students, or sorry, pre-med students into their medical school without requiring the MCAT. So I would look into, you know, what opportunities are out there. There's a lot of, you know, highly ranked med schools that are doing the same thing that Stanford is doing. They're following suit now because it's been so hard for people to sit for their MCATs. All the dates keep getting canceled. So I would highly suggest looking into what options are out there. And I've found that it's more and more true as the years go on that a dedication to medicine, which could mean you've applied 2 or 3 times or 2 or 3 different cycles, is more important than having the best stats and having the best extracurriculars. Just that action of, okay, I'm gonna apply even though I didn't get in the first time is enough for a lot of AdComs to, you know, prove that you're dedicated to medicine. So I think that's important. Alrighty, so I wanted to include a slide that kind of summed up my like tips for this whole process. If you're interested in medicine, things that you can start doing even now. Are most people high schoolers here, or do we have more?
So like there's a range. So I know there's some college students in here, and then I think most are high schoolers though, but there's some college students.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, at any stage of your life, I think these things are very important to being a good med student and then eventually becoming a great physician. So this first picture on the left represents self-reflection. So like I talked about earlier, you want to kind of look inside yourself and say, what kind of doctor do I see myself becoming? I like to just flesh out all the details. It helps you not only during interviews, but it helps you like figure out exactly what you want to do. What are the 3 most important things to me in a future career? So for me, like the top of that list is always helping people, a work-life balance, and being known for doing something. Like I want to be known for doing something, especially during this like coronavirus pandemic. Like how great would it be if people were like, oh, this method for, you know, a ventilator setting was invented by this person. That would be cool. So that's a great question to ask yourself. Also, what are 3 qualities that I have that are rare or that many people don't have? I think setting yourself apart in the application process is one of the main things. So this requires narrowing down your interests and making them as specific as possible. So for example, my interests include mentorship, social justice, women's health. So just narrowing down your field from, helping people to, okay, well, what kind of people do I want to help and how am I going to get there? I think that's important at any stage, especially the high school stage. Y'all have so much time and you have amazing ideas. You are like so connected. Gen Z is so connected to the world that it's a really beautiful thing. So definitely capitalize on that. So this next picture is mentorship. So getting plugged in with the right people is so helpful. And I don't think I realized that until about last year. Reach out to people that are living the life that you want to live. So just recently I reached out to, or about last year actually, I reached out to Dr. Dara Cass, and she's this like amazing famous EM doctor in emergency medicine doctor in New York City. And she has this podcast and she has this whole organization called Femme in EM, which talks about like diversity in emergency medicine. And she came and spoke at Baylor. And I actually like skipped class to go to her event because she's just too cool. And then I just like met with her afterwards and got her to be on my podcast. And then now we're just like friends, and she's a great mentor to me. So I think that like really capitalizing on those opportunities that you have, if there is a speaker that you really love, or making those opportunities for yourself, you can reach out over Twitter, you can reach out over Instagram, you can reach out more formally through email to people that are doing what you want to be doing eventually. So I think that's really important. And it's not necessary to be like so formal and go through email every time. I think Twitter is amazing for like professional networking and connecting with people that you admire. So definitely reach out. I recently made a Twitter as well because a lot of people I know will tweet out their research. They'll tweet out like, even just tweeting out like wear a mask is like a great thing to do as a healthcare professional. A lot of advocacy work goes on Twitter. So, and then the last thing, I think just do it, just at the risk of sounding cliche. If there's something you want to do, if there's a problem in the world that you want to solve or that you're passionate about, just do the damn thing. There's so many things going on in the world right now. There's Corona, there's, at the risk of getting political, there's people's rights being taken away, many groups that don't have equal rights. And there's a lot to fight for right now. So, I mean, even from things like hospitals not having adequate PPE to, I've seen people get involved in making apps to screen people for COVID, people as young as high school students. So I think that if you're passionate about something, just go for it. Our eyes have been opened to all the things that are going on right now. Gen Z is so connected, and TikTok is such a great way to reach a large platform of people. So if you want to make a difference in medicine, especially in the field of medicine, I personally think, my little lane is increasing the diversity and inclusion in medicine, but there's so many other lanes and there's so many other things that fall under that umbrella of inequality in medicine that need fixing. So if you're passionate, you can make a difference. Like no matter how young you are, you have social media, and I think it's an extremely powerful tool. So last thing, the power of social media, get a Twitter and a LinkedIn to kind of list your accomplishments. LinkedIn has this amazing thing called LinkedIn Learning. It's where you can take courses in pretty much anything. You can learn how to code over the summer. You can learn how to make an app. You can learn, I'm currently taking a course on Coursera called The Psychology of First Aid. So learning about what to do in a potentially dangerous situation, and you can help de-escalate a situation. It's quite helpful, and it relates to medicine as well. So, and then I'm obviously on Instagram. It's a fun hobby. It's really cool to connect with people on there as well. It's a slightly less professional platform than Twitter for sure though. And then I would highly encourage y'all to stay politically engaged. And then if any of you guys are turning 18 or you're already 18, please go vote in November. It's gonna be a really crazy and monumental election year, and it would be awesome to get involved. I think the trend is that a lot of physicians are moving towards advocacy and they're getting more and more involved because people are seeing the difference that, you know, doctors can really make in the political sphere as well. So if you're interested in anything like that, I would highly encourage staying politically engaged. And then a few last words are that once you sign on for the field of medicine, you have signed on for a lifelong learning process. So even in med school, I'm always learning, even if I'm on a break. I just took a shelf exam on Friday, and even now I am always plugged in. I'm always listening to podcasts. I would highly recommend The Daily by the New York Times. It is a news podcast that comes on like every morning. They have a new episode and it tells you what went on the previous day. Follow creators on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. They are going to give you the kind of content that you need to be a better person, to be a better physician. There's a lot of creators that talk about the same things I talk about as well on Instagram. So fill your feed with great information and people like you and people that are doing what you want to be doing. And then network via Twitter or LinkedIn. A lot of program directors, admission committee people are on Twitter. So even for residency programs, as I'm looking forward to residency after medical school, I've been advised that, you know, you can network with program directors for residency programs on Twitter. So you wouldn't think about that, but I think it's a great resource to have. So with that, I think that was my last slide. But thank you guys so much for listening. And I would love to take questions if you have any questions about anything I spoke about. Okay, let me see the chat. Did you have a lot of clinical hours in undergrad? So I don't know what would be considered a lot, but I did a lot of shadowing. I think that was helpful. I think everyone does shadowing though. So I think it's almost just like a checked box, and I would look at it as more of an experience for yourself to, you know, kind of make the decision if this is a field you want to go into. I know that there's a lot of people that do more clinically relevant things. Like I know I have some friends that have been EMTs or they've been scribes even in undergrad. So I think that that can only help. The more hours you have, it, you know, shows a great dedication to the field that you've really explored it. So it definitely won't hurt if you know, do as many clinical hours as possible. And then I volunteered at like some hospitals and stuff, but I don't think that was like nearly as involved as a lot of other people got. Okay, can I do biomedical? Is this the right path for going to the medical path? Physics 2, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I don't know much about the MCAT or what is on it or what is required to take to perform well on it. But I'm sure this is a question that someone else can answer much better than I can. And then, yeah, I've had a lot of friends that have done like biochemistry or biomedical sciences as their major. And I'm sure that those people were a little tiny bit more prepared for those first 2 terms or the first year of medical school than I was, or that people with different majors were. So I think that that's a good major to pick if you're interested in biochemistry or you love science a lot, then definitely.
All right, for sure. So those are all the questions in the chat for right now, but we've also got questions from a separate form that students wanted to ask you. So one question we had was, I know you talked about it in the presentation, but if you could you reiterate, like, how is medical school like? I think another question would be like, if you could describe medical school in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh gosh, okay. I almost want to say it's like a collective traumatic experience. It's like a beautiful learning experience. You delve like head first on your first week of med school. You're learning so much information. You get tested a lot, like personally tested, not like academically tested. And by collective traumatic experience, I mean that it's it's a lot of long hours, it's a lot of studying, but you love every minute of it, and you're doing it with some of your best friends who are going through the same exact thing. So it's pretty wonderful to like just like talk at the end of the day about, because everyone's doing the same thing, everyone's learning the same things, everyone is going to clinical rotations, we all have the same worries, the same fears, the same doubts in ourselves, and then at the end of the day you have a class of 180 students that you can talk about these experiences with. So I would say it's definitely a lot of teamwork. It's a collaborative effort. It tests you, but it's very rewarding. I would say rewarding is a good word.
All right, yeah, definitely. Okay, so another question we had was, what was your major as pre-med? I know you said your major was sociology, but if you could, can you explain like why sociology and not like a pre-med major? And then another one was, do you have any tips for aspiring medical school students? And does my undergrad school matter that much?
Okay, so we'll do the sociology one first. So I picked sociology because I wanted to do something that was not sciencey. I started out as a bio major, and then the first 2 years I was bio major, and I got done with a lot of my pre-med prerequisites by being a bio major. They were just included within that major. And then as I got to some like higher level bio classes, it was a lot of, at least at Baylor, it was like entomology, like study of insects, study of animals. And that was something that I had absolutely no interest in. I just wanted to study people, and I was surprised that there wasn't, you had to take a lot of other like animal biology classes before you got to like human anatomy and like neurology, or neuroscience rather. So I didn't want to jump through those hoops, and I was always extremely passionate about the social sciences, psychology and sociology. And so everyone at Baylor was required to take the intro to sociology class. So I was just enrolled in that, and my professor was totally different from like any of the sciencey professors at Baylor. Just like super woke, super fun, like brought us food like every Friday. And like, I just like really vibed with that. So I decided to take a few more courses. And then I was originally going to do sociology minor. And then I eventually just made it my major because the classes were honestly super fun, very practical. When you get into arguments with people, you have like a bunch of studies to back it up. You have that ammo. So it's quite lovely. And then what was the second question? I forget.
The second question was, do you have any tips for aspiring medical school students?
Yeah, so like we talked about, I think get some good mentors. I think that's like the way I did pretty much anything in undergrad and in med school, was finding great mentors. So that's how I found like research. That's how I found volunteering opportunities. Pretty much all of that. So get mentorship. And then the second thing is really like flesh out the details of what kind of physician you want to be, and start doing those things now. Especially if you're in high school or undergrad, like do not underestimate the amount of time that you have to do all of these things. And get politically engaged, just have interests outside of medicine as well. You do have limited time when you get to med school. So I think that fleshing out those details now and figuring that stuff out is like the kind of pre-work that you can do before you get here. Mm-hmm. And then, what was the last question? Sorry, I forgot.
No, you're definitely okay. It's, does my undergrad school matter that much?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think that, people in my medical school are from everywhere. There's like one girl from Harvard, but people are from everywhere. So there's people from state schools, there's people from like small Christian schools, there's people from like schools I've never even heard of. And we all eventually ended up at the same place. The only difference I can see like your school making is possibly like the amount of resources you have. So a lot of schools may not have certain scholarships, they might not have certain like mission trips or focuses in global health, or so I would just look out and see, like, you know, what is the school focused on? Like, I know for Baylor, it was a lot of like, they loved their medical mission trips, like absolutely loved that. So I was interested in that a little bit. I liked how globally focused that school was. And so I was totally happy to go there. So that's the only difference I can really see is like, okay, maybe they have different, a different focus and a different mission statement, but I don't think it makes a huge difference. I don't think that med school committees are like, ooh, she went to Harvard, like she must be the best person. So.
Okay, cool. So another one we had is, did you apply to any scholarships / internships that made your college application stand out?
So I applied to a few different scholarship programs, but I don't think that I mean, it was honestly just for like money, for like a merit scholarship. It wasn't necessarily like a like prestigious scholarship program or anything like that. Thinking about internships, I really have to like look back to the high school years because that's when my like application process was. And I was honestly just kind of bopping around doing my own thing at the time. Um, During high school, when I applied to these like BSMD programs, I was really passionate about singing. So that's what I talked about a lot during my interview was like trying out for The Voice or doing something that related to singing. And then I was also teaching voice lessons at the time. And I had organized like a little choir group to go to like senior centers. So I think the things that I talked about the most were things that I had like just started myself. And I could say like, you know, I was a leader or I had done this thing that didn't exist before. Those are the things that are more meaningful. But I didn't particularly participate in any like internship programs or any like prestigious scholarship programs that strengthened my application.
All right, for sure. One more we had was, how does it feel like to be a female and person of color studying the STEM field?
Gosh, yeah, don't even get me started. So yeah, this is what I do talk about this a lot on my podcast. So being a woman in medicine is a great blessing, but it's also a little bit difficult at times. I think that over the years, I've learned to speak up and like just be loud in certain conversations or be louder than my counterparts, my male counterparts in certain situations. Um, you're going to have those experiences where people will talk over you, people will interrupt you, people will assume that you're not prepared or that you don't study as hard as them, or they'll have microaggressions here and there. But I think that it's a great opportunity to kind of prove yourself and prove your resiliency in a male-dominated field. And I think there's a study out that said that the patients of female physicians actually have better outcomes. So we need more medicine. We need more women in medicine. And I think that whenever I like doubt myself or I have some little inklings of imposter syndrome, I remind myself of that fact and the fact that my patients will have better outcomes. And then being a person of color, I think that it mostly comes from patients, the microaggressions. I haven't had a whole lot of struggles when it comes to like people in my actual medical school when it comes to being a woman of color. I've had patients assume that I was like a nurse, which is fine. I've had patients assume that I was in nursing school, or that that's just something that all women can relate to, though. But I think that Asian people are overrepresented in medicine, if I'm correct about that. So I think that once we get our place here, it's really important that we don't take it for granted, and that we do all the work we can possibly do to increase the diversity, the inclusion in our medical schools. So I've just devoted my time to that recently. But to kind of be short about it, it hasn't really affected my like everyday life. So I think it gets a little hard here and there, and it's kind of annoying because your male counterparts won't struggle with it at all, especially your white male counterparts. But it just means you have to work twice as hard, and it makes you twice as good later.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I know high school was a while back, but one person's asking, what were your grades and extracurriculars like in high school?
So my grades were not the best, but so to apply to any of these BSMD programs, I think the lowest GPA that they accepted was like a 3.6 or a 3.7. And that's what I had. And then the lowest like SAT or ACT that they accepted, that's what I had. So I just kind of skated by to all these like interviews for BSMD programs. But I think it goes to show that different schools are looking for different things. I know a lot of programs that are like super academic focused or super research focused. But I think Baylor was one of those programs that they really valued diversity in their medical school class. So if you look at, you know, my friends that all got accepted during the same year, we each like brought something different to the table. You had your people that were super research focused, but I think that I was like super service focused. So that's kind of what I leaned on, despite my grades not being like super great in high school. And then what was the other question about high school?
It was just like your extracurriculars.
Oh, extracurriculars. Yeah, I think I talked about that a little bit with like, I was really focused on my singing and choir and theater, and I worked at the senior center a lot, and I also like volunteered at a hospital, which I think most high school students, if you're interested in medicine and you know in high school that you're interested, you're probably already doing that.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. The final question we got from the form is, how important is research for getting into medical school, and what is the best way for study groups to study? The last one was kind of random, but yeah.
Okay. So I think research is really, really important. I think it's almost expected now. It's kind of just that box that you have to check. And a lot of research in undergrad is bench work, which is, and I don't mean to say that in a bad way, it's just not my thing, which means like you're working in a lab, you're doing experiments, and it's a lot of like tedious work. But if you are an undergrad right now, I would highly recommend getting involved with a clinical research opportunity. So personally, the research that I'm doing right now, we have a high school student involved that is transcribing all of our interviews for us. So I think something like that, reaching out to a local medical school, reaching out to a local undergrad that might be like affiliated with a medical school about these opportunities, that would be the best thing to do, is to get involved in clinical research. But to be frank about it, it's pretty important. I think everyone at this point will have some sort of research experience in undergrad. And then for like group study, I study as with a group, maybe like once a week during my preclinical years at Baylor. I thought it was extremely helpful to kind of just like talk about concepts. So one thing that we did, we would make like one-page study summaries of every lecture, and we would split up the lectures and we would put little blanks in the notes, and then our like study group partners would have to fill in the blanks. So it would be like the definition of something, and then the blank would be like, what is that something? And then we would like all talk about it, and we would all be filling out the blanks as we talked about it. So I thought that was a good way to study as a group.
Definitely. Okay, so that's all the questions we have in the form. I think personally for me, one of my questions would be, so since the whole Corona and COVID has taken away so many like opportunities such as volunteering at hospitals for high schoolers and everything, do you happen to know any other opportunities for high schools like during this time that they can do?
Yeah, so I think like I was talking about with the research, I think it would be a really awesome to get involved with some type of remote research opportunity right now. Doesn't have to be COVID related, but the research that I'm a part of is COVID related, and we're like just monitoring medical students and healthcare providers during this time. And we have a high school student that's transcribing all of those interviews. So definitely get on an opportunity like that. And this high school girl is probably going to get her name on the paper as well. So that's like such an awesome opportunity. you can also, what I've seen is people organizing like PPE drives. So they'll like have people donate PPE, reach out to your networks, social media, and deliver PPE to hospitals. Anything you can do to like make healthcare providers' lives easier is kind of like your place in medicine right now, since you can't be like at the front lines of anything right now. You can like make other people's lives easier. You can get involved with pretty much anything over social media, right? You can be taking courses on Coursera. There's a COVID-19 contact tracing course that anybody can take, and the certificate is free. So if you can go take that course, it'll teach you how to contact trace, and maybe you use that certificate to do something, maybe you don't, but at least you'll have a certificate, which is really cool. You can also help with screening processes. I'm not quite sure how that works out, but I know a few undergrad friends that I have will like stand at doors and like screen people. I don't know how safe that is though, or how involved you want to be in the field, but any remote opportunity, especially for learning, like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, get involved with like a political campaign. Anything you can do remotely is beautiful during this time, and y'all have so much time, so make use of it.
Definitely. All right, so that pretty much sums up the questions we have. We just want to say thank you again from the bottom of our heart from the SAMP team. We really appreciate you coming out here, talking to everyone. And before like we end off, I was just wondering, is it okay if we post this on YouTube? Yes?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, definitely. So if no one has any other questions, I believe that's going to be it. Again, we just want to say thank you. And yeah, have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, bye everyone.